Good morning. Good morning, distinguished delegates. I call to order the 10th plenary meeting of the 22nd session of the Assembly. This morning, we will consider the draft resolutions before the Assembly. We will then hear the report of the Credentials Committee. Finally, we will adopt the report of the 22nd session of the Assembly. Some draft texts have only been made available very late last night, since we must conclude our work today, as envisaged in Rule 56 of the Rules of Procedure of the Assembly, and as was also done in the past. We shall now proceed to take action on all drafts before us. And we shall begin by reverting to Agenda Item 16, consideration and adoption of the budget for the 22nd financial year. Here, we take up the report of the working group on the program budget, the draft resolution on the program budget for 2024, and the proposed program budget for 2024. We will first turn to the report of the working group on the program budget. You have before you the report of the working group contained in document ICC ASP22 Working Group on Program Budget CRP1, which has been submitted by the chair of the working group on the program budget, Ambassador Ksenia Milenkovic. May I take it that the Assembly wishes to adopt the report of the working group on the program budget contained in document ICC ASP22 Working Group Program Budget /CRP1? If I see no objection, the report of the working group is adopted. The Assembly shall now take action on the draft resolution on the program budget for 2024 contained in document ICC ASP/22/L2. I now give the floor to the coordinator on the budget, Ambassador Ksenia Milenkovic from Serbia, to introduce the draft resolution. Ambassador, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam President, for giving me the floor, and good morning to all. The 2024 proposed program budget was submitted to the 22nd session of the Assembly by the Registrar of the Court. The Assembly has been provided with statements by the Registrar, as well as statements from the Chair of the Committee on Budget and Finance, the External Auditor, and the Chair of the Audit Committee. The relevant documentation will be contained in Volume 2 of the official records of the 22nd session. The draft resolution on the program budget for 2024, dated 13 December 2023, has been distributed by email. The draft resolution contains 17 sections from A to Q, addressing various aspects of the budget. The resolution was discussed during informal consultations in the Hague Working Group this year and in the Assembly's Working Group on Program Budget. The budget as set out in the draft resolution amounts to a total of 187,084,300 euros, which represents a 7.99% increase on the 2023 approved budget, including the host state loan. It is my conclusion as the coordinator that there is consensus, and therefore I would like to submit the resolution for the consideration of the Assembly. I would like to thank the Committee on Budget and Finance, the External Auditor, the Audit Committee, and the Court for their contributions. I also wish to thank the focal points for the budget subtopics, the budget management oversight and premises, Ambassador Jaime Moscoso Valenzuela from Chile, and Mr. Julian Camilo Silva from Colombia, respectively. And now that I have read through, the official notes, I would like to say a few words, if you don't mind, on a personal note. First of all, it's been another year of difficult and a long road to the budget. So we finished last night, sometime before midnight. I'm not really exactly sure. And in that regard, I would wholeheartedly like to thank all the delegations that engaged proactively in the discussion, and all of them showed tremendous flexibility to lead us to the result that we achieved, which, as I said, is 7.99% of increase in comparison to the 2023 program budget. So my thanks really goes to all the delegations. Madam President, thank you for trusting in us that we can do this. Without you and your support throughout this year, it wouldn't be possible. So I'm really very personally thankful to you, as well as to President Hofmansky, who was also there with us all the time. The registrar, Osvaldo, I mean, he stayed with us every night, all night, to do the calculations. It's really, I mean, you and your team, it was an invaluable support to the budget facilitation and all the delegations in this process. Thank you so much. Without Secretariat, Renan, Marisa, Nuria, and the whole team, again, this would not be possible. And I really thank them from the bottom of my heart for assisting us in this process and being there for us all the time. I would like to extend really personal and wholeheartedly thanks to the vice presidents, Bob Ray from Canada, Beatrice, Chris, the whole Canadian team, for really making our time in New York memorable and helping us here. This is not for us from The Hague like a natural environment. Also the Czech Republic, the vice president from The Hague, Katerina Sekwensova and Martina, for supporting us throughout. I know they are not here, but they know that we really thank them a lot. And of course, last but certainly not least, I would like to thank our excellent, more than excellent legal advisor from the embassy in Serbia in The Hague, Marija Stajić-Radivojša, who was at many times more a facilitator than I was this year. Thank you very much, Madam President.
I thank you for the introduction and of the report, the resolution, and for your efforts throughout this very excruciating journey. It was not easy. I had no doubts that you would succeed, but it did take a lot of effort from your part and many others that you have mentioned, and of course all of you who participated in the negotiations. So I really thank you. Sorry?
Just one more sentence. Forgot one thing. Oh, sorry. No, sorry, because I don't see Racine in here from the OTP. Oh, Racine. Thank you so much. Sorry, I mean, because I was looking at but I didn't see you there. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Now everybody has been thanked, and it did take a lot of people to achieve this result. Thank you, all of you. And now is the time for adoption. Is there any delegation that wishes to explain its position before taking action on the draft resolution? I see none. May I take it that the Assembly wishes to adopt the draft resolution contained in document ICC ASP22/L2 without a vote? I see no objection. The draft resolution contained in document ICC ASP/22/L2 is adopted. Is there any delegation wishing to explain its position after the adoption of the resolution? I see none. Thank you. We shall now proceed to take action on the proposed program budget for 2024 contained in document ICC ASP22/10 as read in conjunction with the recommendations of the working group contained in its report. Is there any delegation that wishes to explain its position before taking action on the proposed program budget? I see none. May I take it that it is the wish of the Assembly to adopt by consensus the proposed program budget for 2024 contained in document ICC ASP/22/10 as read in conjunction with the recommendations of the working group on the budget contained in its report? I see no objection. It is so decided. Is there any delegation that wishes to explain its position after the adoption of the program budget? I see none. Again, I wish to express appreciation on behalf of the Assembly to all of you participating in these consultations, but also to express appreciation for the assistance which the Chair of the Committee on Budget and Finance, Mr. Werner Drummel, has provided at this session. This Assembly has thus concluded its consideration of Agenda Item 16. The Assembly will now take action on the draft resolution on cooperation contained in document ICC ASP/22/L7. Is there any delegation that wishes to explain its position before we take action on the draft resolution? I see none. May I take it that it is the wish of the Assembly to adopt by consensus the draft resolution on cooperation contained in document ICC ASP/22L7? I see no objection. The draft resolution on cooperation is adopted. Is there any delegation that wishes to explain its position after the adoption of the resolution on cooperation? I see none. The Assembly has thus concluded its consideration of Agenda Item 18. The Assembly will now take action on the draft resolution contained in document ICC ASP/22/L5 entitled Review of the International Criminal Court and the Rome Statute System. Is there any delegation that wishes to explain its position before we take action on the draft resolution? I see none. I thank you, and I take now that it is the wish of the Assembly to adopt by consensus the draft resolution on the review of the International Criminal Court and the Rome Statute System contained in document ICC ASP/22/L5. I see no objection. The draft resolution contained in document ICC ASP/22/L5 is adopted. Is there any delegation that wishes to explain its position after the adoption of the resolution? I see none. So the Assembly will now take action on the draft resolution contained in document ICC ASP/22/L6 entitled Implementation of the Tenure Policy. Is there any delegation that wishes to explain its position before we take action on the draft resolution? I see none. May I take it that it is the wish of the Assembly to adopt by consensus the draft resolution on the implementation of the tenure policy contained in document ICC ASP/22/L6? I see no objection. The draft resolution contained in document ICC ASP/22/L6 is adopted. Is there any delegation that wishes to explain its position after the adoption of the resolution? I see none. The Assembly has thus concluded its consideration of Agenda Item 13. The Assembly will now take action on the draft resolution on the election of members to the Committee on Budget and Finance of the International Criminal Court contained in document ICC ASP/22L9. Is there any delegation that wishes to explain its position before we take action on the draft resolution? I see none. May I take it that it is the wish of the Assembly to adopt by consensus the draft resolution on the election of members to the Committee on Budget and Finance contained in document ICC ASP/22/L9? I see no objection. It is so decided. Is there any delegation that wishes to explain its position after the adoption of the resolution? I see none. Oh, yes, I do see. Kenya has the floor, and then Mexico. Kenya.
Thank you very much, Madam President, and good morning, dear colleagues. We welcome the adoption of this resolution by consensus. As has earlier been indicated by the facilitator, for whom we have profound respect for her great work, it remains and behoves us as state parties to ensure that this resolution is implemented in a manner to make the Committee on Budget and Finance operate in an efficient and effective way. The work of the Committee of Budget and Finance is highly important, and we must facilitate it to make it fit for purpose. One way of doing this, Madam President, is to accord their reports and recommendations with greater reverence and veneration. As state parties, we must also ensure that the committee is fully constituted at all times. We cannot be seen to have expanded its membership for expansion's sake. With this, it is the understanding of this delegation that the issue of term limits will commence at the next election cycle without prejudice to any current or sitting members. And now that we have the floor, Madam President, we wish every delegate safe travels back home, safe stays for the ones who are staying, and happy holidays. I thank you, Madam President.
I thank you, and now I give the floor to Mexico.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Mexico would like to convey its considerations about the resolution on the composition of the Committee on Budget and Finance in order to establish the position of our delegation. Firstly, we convey our deep gratitude to the facilitator for her tireless efforts and dedication throughout the year. We recognize that this was not an easy task, and we value her commitment. Negotiations on the composition of this committee have been a challenge since they touch upon sensitive matters in the organization, equitable geographic representation. Mexico tried to strike a balance between the need to have equitable geographical representation in the committee without leading to disproportionate budget implications at a time when many member states are facing economic and political difficulties, austerity. During the negotiations, we looked for a fair solution and explored various options which have been presented by the facilitator. With flexibility, we explored increasing the composition in a reasonable manner. In the view of our delegation, the decision to increase the composition of the committee by 40% led to important budget consequences. We, considering that this was the solution that had the greatest support, Mexico joined in the consensus. We will continue to be committed to the functioning of the court, but we will remain alert to the impact of this decision, and we will continue offering solutions which are in keeping with the economic realities of our country. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Delegation that wishes to explain its position at this stage. I see no further requests from the floor, so now we can proceed to agenda item 7B, Report of the Credentials Committee. I give the floor to the chair of the Credentials Committee, Ambassador Jane Gasu Aeto, Ghana, to present the report of the Credentials Committee contained in document ICC ASP22/L8. Ambassador, you have the floor.
Madam President, distinguished delegates, the report of the Credentials Committee is contained in document ICC ASP/22/L8. The Credentials Committee adopted by consensus the draft resolution contained in paragraph 7 of the report, accepting the credentials of the representatives of the states parties referred to in paragraphs 4 and 5. Having received an additional original credential this morning, I suggest paragraph 4 is amended accordingly by including Guatemala. Therefore, the corresponding modification will also be made in paragraph 5. The committee recommends to the Assembly the adoption of the draft resolution contained in paragraph 10, by which the Assembly would adopt the report of the Credentials Committee. Thank you, Madam President.
I thank the chair of the Credentials Committee for introducing the report. May I take it that the Assembly wishes to approve the report of the Credentials Committee as contained in document ICC ASP/22/L8 as orally amended? I see no objection. It is so decided. And we have thus concluded our consideration of agenda item 7. The Assembly will now consider the draft report of the 22nd session. Before proceeding to adopt the report, I invite Mr. Abdou Ndoye, Senegal, the rapporteur, to introduce the draft report contained in document ICC ASP/22/L1.
Thank you, Madam President. It is my honor to present the draft report of the Assembly of States Parties to the Rome Statute, which held its 22nd session here from the 4th to the 14th of December 2023 in New York. It is in ICC-ASP/22/L1. All the necessary referrals to the resolution adopted by the Assembly will be reflected in the report. The official document of the 22nd session will be published in 2 parts. Volume 1 will contain the report of the Assembly made up of 3 parts. The first part includes discussions and debates from this session and has 2 chapters. Chapter A is called Introduction. It has paragraphs 1 to 14, and it provides factual information on the convening and participation of the 22nd session, the composition of the Credentials Committee, the adoption of the agenda, and the organisation of work. Chapter B is entitled Examination of Items on the Agenda of the 22nd Session of the Assembly. This is on the work of the 22nd session. It provides factual information on the Assembly's activities regarding each item of the agenda of the session. It refers to various results of activities undertaken, resolutions and decisions adopted, recommendations made, and also agreements reached by the Assembly. Chapter B is divided into 19 sections. Paragraph 15 of Section 1 is on the election of the President for the 23rd and 24th and 25th sessions of the Assembly. Paragraph 16 of Section 2 is on the election of the 2 Vice Presidents and the 18 members of the Bureau for the 23rd, 24th and 25th sessions of the Assembly. Paragraph 17 to 19 of Section 3 is on the states that are in arrears in their contributions. Sections 4, 20 to 21 of the draft report is regarding the credentials of the states parties to the 22nd session. 22 to 23 of Section 5 refer to the general debate that took place during the 22nd session. Section 6, paragraphs 24 to 26, refers to the report on the activities of the Bureau that the Assembly took due note of. 27 of Section 7, that paragraph is on the report of the activities of the Court that the Assembly also took due note of. Paragraph 28 of Section 8 refers to the Trust Fund for Victims and their Executive Board and the statement of its President, and the Assembly took note of this. Section 9, 29 to 31 regards the examination of the ICC and the Rome Statute system. The Assembly adopted the resolution through which, inter alia, it decided for an additional year to extend the mechanism. The Assembly also adopted by consensus a resolution whereby it decided to set up a policy starting from 2025. And here it requested from the mechanism to facilitate these discussions. Section 10, paragraph 32 to 42 refer to the election of 6 judges of the court for the period 2024 to 2033. Paragraphs 44 to 45 of Section 11 are on the election of the members of the Budget and Finance Committee. Section 12, 46 to 50 is on the consideration and adoption of the budget of the 22nd financial exercise. The Assembly approved the report of the working group in ICC ASP/22/WGPB-CRP1. And it also adopted the programme budget for 2024. Furthermore, the Assembly adopted the resolution on the budget programme that covers the following areas. The programme budget for 2024 with authorisations for expense is 1.25
euro et les tableaux
and it is 187 and the million, and the there is the loan from the host country. The working capital fund for 2024, the contributions that are lacking, also the scale of assessments for the expenditure of the court, the expense authorizations for 2024, the premises of the court, the transfer of major programs approved for 2023. audit, budget control and audit, the elaboration of budget programs, a strategic approach to improve the budget process, human resources, referrals by the Security Council, the 5-year strategy on ICT management, amendments to the financial rules and regulations, family visits for detainees and travel. This is in the resolution, and this will be reflected in the final report. Paragraph 51 of Section 13 is on the examination of the budget. This is in the working group. The report of the auditor and the report of the CBF will also be in volume 2 of the official documents. Section 14, 52 to 53 notes that the Assembly adopted a resolution on cooperation. Paragraphs 54 to 55 of Section 15 regard amendments to the Rome Statute, to the Rules of Procedure and Evidence. The Assembly adopted the resolution ICC ASP22 Res.1 on amendments to the Rules of Procedure and Evidence, namely 69 bis inter alia, judicial notifications of procedures when there is a permanent absence of a judge. The Assembly also adopted a resolution ICC ASP22/Res2, through which it amended Article 39(2)(b) of the Rome Statute. It took note of the report of the working group on the amendments. Section 1656, the Assembly took note of the activities undertaken in 2023 to commemorate the 25th anniversary of the adoption of the Rome Statute. Paragraph 17 refers to the dates of the next session of the ASP. Now on to Section 18. The decisions on the next meeting of the CBF. As in the past, the resolution on the organisation of the general discussion will not have distinct parts because the decisions taken are already reflected in the different parts of the report. Section 19 deals with other matters. Paragraph 59 to 60 refers to the trust fund to facilitate the participation of least developed countries and other developing countries in the work of the Assembly. The second part of the report will have observations and recommendations from the Assembly on the report of the auditors, the report of regarding the programme budget for 2024, observations and recommendations from the Assembly on matters having a financial and budgetary impact. As regards Part 3, I would suggest that the Secretariat be invited, as in the part, to incorporate in the final report the resolutions adopted by the Assembly at its 22nd session. The annexes to the report of the 22nd session will contain the report of the Credentials Committee, the report of the Working Group on the Programme Budget, the statement made by the President or the Chair of the Finance and Budget Committee, the statement made by states to explain their vote, and a list of documents. I would like to ask delegations who have linguistic corrections and editorial changes to make in any language to submit them directly, please, to the Secretariat. Those corrections will then be incorporated into the official document. Madam President, I would like to conclude on the draft report on the of the Assembly of States Parties to recommend it be adopted by the Assembly. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much, Rapporteur, for introducing the report of this session of the Assembly.
We shall begin the adoption of our report. I propose that we proceed by chapter or section as appropriate. I request delegations wishing to propose editorial or technical corrections to please contact the Secretariat directly. So we now go to chapter 1A, Introduction, and does the Assembly agree to adopt paragraphs 1 to 14 within this chapter A? Chapter A is adopted. Now we go into chapter B, section 1. Section 2. Section 3. Section 4. Section 5. Section 6. Section 7. Section 8. Section 9. Section 10. Section 11. Section 12. Section 13. Section 14. Section 15. Section 16. Section 17. Section 18. Section 19. So chapter B, sections 1 to 19 are adopted. So, may I take it that it is the wish of the Assembly to adopt the report of the 22nd session of the Assembly of State Parties as a whole? I see no objection. The report of the 22nd session of the Assembly contained in document ICC ASP/22/L1 is adopted. The Secretariat will compile the report and the relevant annexes as soon as possible, and the final version will be posted on the official website of the Court. May I take it that it is the wish of the Assembly to proceed on this basis? I see no objection. It is so decided. Distinguished delegates, we have thus concluded our consideration of the items on our agenda for the 22nd session. Before closing, I wish to indicate that the Coalition for the International Criminal Court has requested the opportunity to make a brief statement. Does the Assembly agree to invite the Coalition for the International Criminal Court to make a brief statement? I see no objection. I give the floor to the Coalition for the International Criminal Court.
Madam President, Excellencies, dear colleagues, the Coalition for the ICC is the world's largest civil society partnership for global justice. We were represented at this ASP session by more than 200 individual human rights defenders from all around the world, many of whom traveled in spite of serious challenges, including visa and financial constraints. We welcome the expressions of support from many states parties during this session regarding the critical role of civil society and human rights defenders in the Rome Statute system. We urge the Assembly to ensure that civil society participation in its work is safeguarded and guaranteed, including in the next phase of the review process. We call on states parties to remain vigilant and continue to defend and protect human rights defenders who are targeted because of their work to advance justice. Recalling the statement we made during the cooperation plenary, among others, we welcome that the Assembly took another step forward this year by producing a set of guidelines to ensure that human rights defenders can engage with the Assembly safely. We thank President Fernandez de Gurmendi for her leadership on this important issue. We look forward to working with the incoming presidency and Bureau to advance these essential discussions, including on the implementation of the guidelines, with genuine and accessible consultations with those most concerned. The Coalition stands ready to support and facilitate such engagement. We also reiterate our call to states parties to ensure that the Court has the resources it needs to implement its mandate in all situations. We welcome the increased willingness from states at this session to recognize the pressing needs of the Court and to move away from zero nominal growth. We welcome the joint statement of 48 states parties delivered by Costa Rica during the cooperation plenary, affirming that all victims deserve equal access to justice. Nonetheless, the Assembly continues to fail to set an annual budget that reflects the real and sustained investment needed to support the Court's global mandate, with full respect for victims and defense rights. Going forward, we urge states parties to reframe the annual budget discussions and work urgently toward providing the Court adequate and sustainable resources in its regular budget, along with the replenishment of the contingency fund. This is fundamental to best safeguard the Court's independence and legitimacy and avoid politicization and selectivity or perceptions of inappropriate bias in the work of the Court. Excellencies, we welcome states parties' commitment to improving the ICC election process, and in particular, the historic adoption of the permanent due diligence or vetting procedure for all ICC elections. We extend our congratulations to the facilitators and to the ASP President for engaging with civil society and successfully implementing this significant initiative. We look forward to supporting the implementation in order to ensure that the procedure effectively assesses the high moral character of potential ICC leaders. This is a first among international institutions, which marks a positive momentum towards improving workplace culture and electing the best candidates. Further, we look forward to engaging with this Assembly next year to improve national nomination procedures, a critical building block to ensure the Court has the most highly qualified bench. Reciprocal political agreements or vote trading have no place in ICC elections, and the Coalition calls on states parties to firmly commit from the very first step of nominations to fair, transparent, and merit-based elections. Finally, we would also like to bid farewell and thank President Fernandez de Gurmendi, Vice President Sequencova and Ray, as well as ICC President Mansky. We look forward to engaging with the ASP presidency-elect, the new Bureau, and all states parties next year. This Assembly is increasing by one member in February of next year, and we congratulate once again and welcome Armenia as the 124th state party to the statute. The Coalition for the ICC reiterates its appreciation for the unique consultative status that we have with the Court and with the Assembly. We will work to ensure that the lived experience of affected communities informs the critical decisions that you make as guardians of the Rome Statute system and the values it represents. We will continue to seek your partnership to help safeguard the court's mandate and promise of justice for victims. Thank you for your attention.
I thank the coalition for these remarks and for highlighting some of the important achievements during this session of the Assembly. And thank you for your kind words as well. So now, distinguished representatives, distinguished President of the Court, distinguished Registrar and staff of the Court, dear colleagues, dear friends, we are now at the closing of this 22nd session of the Assembly of Third Parties and at the end of my 3-year mandate as President of the Assembly. So it is now time for me to say thank you and goodbye. It has been a tremendous honor to serve you during these 3 years, and indeed a huge privilege to be able to contribute a bit from this position to the consolidation and strengthening of the Rome Statute system. In 1998, I believed, with many others, that the court was an idea whose time had come. 25 years down the road, the idea has become a reality, and it is more necessary than ever. Today, we need more justice, no less. Yes, the court is not perfect. There is not such thing as a perfect institution. But it has already proved that it can deliver high-quality justice and address effectively the harm suffered by victims. Like in 1998, it continues to be a beacon of hope for populations around the world. It is for the international community, and in particular for the state parties assembled here, to give to the court the cooperation, the resources, and the protection it needs for it to be able to deliver timely justice equally, without selectivity, as so many of you have emphasized, in all situations where it is called upon to act. I believe that during these 3 years, we have made good progress in making the Rome Statute system stronger and the court more resilient through concrete and incremental improvements. The review process was at the center of these efforts and inspired other initiatives. Once again, I thank all those who participated in the review. That was a top priority of this Assembly during my 3 years as President. I thank the representatives of the Court, the Assembly, civil society, and all facilitators and mandate holders who contributed to this review, as well as to the other work and initiatives of this Assembly during these 3 years. I thank my colleagues in the Bureau who accompanied me and trusted me throughout my mandate. I thank them all for their initiatives, their cooperation, and their time. I thank my dear Vice Presidents, Ambassador Bob Ray from Canada and Katerina Sekwensova from the Czech Republic. You heard me many times saying that it was a delight to work with such great, smart, and friendly colleagues. Once more, I thank them for their constant support and cooperation, as well as for their hard work that kept The Hague and the New York communities fully involved in the work of the Assembly. My recognition also goes to their fantastic legal advisors, Beatriz Maillet and Martina Filipova, who assisted the presidency so much during these 3 years. The court is the raison d'être of this Assembly. During these 3 years, I always made sure that I consulted with the court on all initiatives or statements that could impact it directly. I thank the President and the former and current registrar who always received me, gave me their frank views, and sometimes their candid disagreement. Nothing that a good cup of coffee could not solve. Thank you. And last but not least, thanks to the Secretariat, a wonderful small team of committed individuals that serves this Assembly, its working groups and facilitations throughout the year in The Hague and New York. A special thanks and recognition to its director, Renan Villasis, who will leave us very soon. After many years of great service to this assembly, I wish him all the best in his future endeavors. At the beginning, I said that it had been an honor and a privilege to serve this assembly. I have to conclude by saying that it has also been a great pleasure to be among so many friendly colleagues during these 3 years. I wish my successor, Ambassador Päivi Kaukoranta, her vice presidents Michael Kanu and Margareta Kasangana, as well as the incoming Bureau, a fruitful and successful 3-year term. I am delighted to pass the torch to such distinguished and committed individuals. As regards this session in particular, I would also like to thank the tellers for their important contribution to the election process, the interpreters, the translators, the conference officers, and other United Nations staff members who have assisted us in the organization of the Assembly here at the United Nations headquarters. Dear colleagues and friends, I thank you all. I'm sorry. There is a request from the floor from Vice President Bob Rae from Canada.
I speak from my perch up here as the Vice President who's also stepping down to express my own personal appreciation to all those who've worked so hard over the last 3 years. I think I've certainly have felt very strongly that the work we do is exceptionally important, and I'm extremely grateful for what the chances that I've been given to serve. But most importantly, my dear Sylvia, I want to express my deep appreciation to you for your extraordinary leadership. It has really been a pleasure working with you and also learning from you and seeing the extent of your dedication to the cause which has brought us together over the last 2 weeks and which continues to animate the work of so many around the world in seeking justice. And so I've asked Beatrice Maillet if she could come forward. She's right behind you, just stepping up to give you a little present from us to express our great appreciation to you for what you have done and what you will continue to do. And thank you so, so very much.
Well, thank you very much, very much. I really appreciate this. And before I close the session, I would like to invite you to rise and observe 1 minute of silence dedicated to prayer or meditation, in particular for victims of atrocity crimes around the world. thank you, and I now declare the 22nd session of the Assembly of State Parties to the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court closed. I wish you all a happy holiday season and safe travels to those returning to The Hague or capitals. I thank you very much.